This is Backstage Bay Area, your all-access pass to the music scene. I'm Steve Roby. Today, guitarist and composer Anthony Wilson returns to his first love, the Nonet. His new album, House of the Singing Blossoms, arrives August 29th, and he's celebrating with 4 shows at SFJAZZ's Joe Henderson Lab, September 4th and 5th, 2 shows each night. Coming up, we'll talk to him about the music, the band, and what to expect live. But first, here's a sample of the title track for House of the Singing Blossoms. That's the title track to House of the Singing Blossoms, and my guest is guitarist Anthony Wilson. Anthony, welcome to Backstage Bay Area. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Steve. I'm really excited to talk to you about this new music and upcoming performances.
Me too. Anthony, you've led trios, quartets, and lots in between, but the Nonet keeps calling you back. What opened the door for this return on House of the Singing Blossoms?
The first band that I recorded with was a 9-piece band, and it was something that I did because I had been listening to these beautiful bands led by guitarists like T-Bone Walker and B.B. King, blues-based guitarists surrounded by a horn section, and I found that configuration to be very compelling as a guitarist myself and as a person with, at that time, just the desire to arrange for a larger band. And I felt like if I tried to have a big band, it was just going to be too much. I knew in advance that it was already hard enough booking gigs and organizing schedules, etc. So the 9-piece seemed to be just a very good way to get myself in the swimming pool, so to speak. And I made, over the course of a period of years, 4 albums with the 9-piece band, and in the process taught myself a huge amount about arranging, about writing, about how my guitar could sit inside an ensemble. And then for various reasons, I kind of turned away from that. I had started working with Diana Krall as her guitarist, and we were on tour kind of constantly, and I wasn't writing as many pieces for the large band, and I ended up having trios, as you say, quartets, smaller groups that sort of fit where I was for a number of years. But I always have loved just how rich a palette sonically it can be to have those horns. And so I was just thinking, man, I should write some new stuff for this band. And an opportunity came to do a couple of live shows at a beautiful venue in LA called Sam First. And so I booked it well in advance so that I knew that I could give myself some writing and arranging assignments. And just sometimes you just need a bit of a deadline. And so I did that, and I just had a ball writing new pieces with a kind of refreshed, reinvigorated approach. And it just so happened that Sam First has a record label, and we hatched this idea to do a live album to make those performances into a live album. And so that's what led to this. And so, yeah, it's a bit of a rebirth, new players, a bit of a looser approach to things than I had done in the past that I was really enjoying.
Let's talk about the album's title. I've heard it connects to a striking night photograph by Paul Solomon. What did you hear in that image, and how did it shape the sound or pacing of the record?
The image came after we'd made the record, so the title song was something that I had written, and that was as yet untitled. And when I saw, Paul Solomon is actually the founder of Sam First, and he's also a photographer. And he takes these beautiful photos as part of his he's also a traveler, and so in kind of far-flung locations in different countries. And there was this photo of a kind of building in the night with one light on, and it was with a door opening out into this garden with these beautiful purple flowers, kind of illuminated by the light coming from the building. And I loved that image. And I thought about this particular piece that has a melody that to me reminded me of a kind of a flower garden. And so it seemed fitting. And then I just needed a title, and it was very easy to see in this image, which became the cover image of our album, this house of the singing blossoms. It just seemed to be evocative of, in some way the people in the band are like the singing blossoms, and they kind of bring these melodies and themes into the space in a beautiful way.
Yeah, so. It's a great title too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you mentioned you captured this recording at Sam First, live in the room through their analog to digital setup with an audience right there, and you can hear them clapping. How did recording live, then mixing it in-house and sending it to Bernie Grundman for mastering change the performances or the way you wrote for this band?
If it changed anything, it's that I knew that if songs got too long, extended, you could have problems programming a side of an album. So if I was mindful of anything, I was mindful of trying to tell a complete story, a complete narrative in each piece, and not let things get too unwieldy. But at the same time, I tried not to let the thought that we were making an album come too much into the picture that it might limit the amount of creativity that we could bring to each piece. And so, if somebody was really blazing on a solo, I'm not about to cut them off just because I think we're making a track for an album.
Right.
Example. So what was beautiful about it is that it's spontaneous. When you're in a club and there's an audience there, you're feeding off of each other's energy. The people listening are giving you something, you're giving something to them, and that kind of just keeps happening. And so it's a beautiful way to make a recording, because it can be so, recording in general in a studio can feel limiting, or it make people quite anxious. It's that red light syndrome. The red light goes on and suddenly you can't play anything that you meant to play. And it's exactly the opposite. On a beautiful night at a club, people are feeling good. People are excited to play. There's an audience there. They're having drinks. They're in the mood. And so all of that stuff goes away, and you can just concentrate on the good feeling of being together. But then Sam First has a real dedication to the quality of recording that they're doing. They have the good sense to bring their recordings to the mastering engineer, Bernie Grundman,
Yes.
who has been, he was one of the original mastering engineers at A&M Records. He, of course, back in the day, he even recorded and mastered for Contemporary Records here in Los Angeles, one of the great West Coast jazz labels. So much experience. Yeah. And so we just knew that the record that you hear would be almost like being there. I mean, you kind of feel the soundstage of the musicians enveloping you, and they're kind of placed in the space. Yeah. And if you're listening on a halfway decent system, you really feel like you're there. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. The energy is right there. It feels great. Hey, as a vinyl nerd, I admit it. I'm so happy this record's going to be available on vinyl. It will be pressed as a double 180-gram vinyl gatefold, polyline sleeves, and a limited edition of 1,000 with foil stamped numbers. Why commit to that level of craft for the physical release? Why not? And what do you want listeners to experience when they drop the needle?
Yeah, I mean, I think that although if they listen, of course, on a digital version of the album, which is available, and if they listen when it's available on streaming, they're gonna get an actual, great sounding product. But I think, having vinyl, there's just something so special about that experience. There's a way that you get involved, because I'm a nerd like you with vinyl. And I mean, I listen to music in whatever format it can get to me, because I just love it so much. But that sense of being able to have a physical object that you open up that actually is it's not tiny, you're looking at it, and there's an image, there's information to read. Now you pick that album up, you put it on your turntable, and side after side, you have these kind of 20-minute periods where you can become engrossed in the music.
Yes, indeed.
Sit back, you're just listening to it in a different way. I feel it engages me personally. I feel more than listening to digital records does. And I mean, this is a substantial amount of music, a double album, 4 20-minute sides. It's about 80 minutes of music. So it's almost as though stepping inside that club and watching 2 sets.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. And I love the analog sound. It's a little less strident than the presentation of digital. And I think that also contributes to how engaging it is.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the lineup for the record. And I know I'm going to massacre a couple of names here, so you might want to help me out. CJ
Camerieri.
Okay, that's a tough one for me.
Trumpet and French horn.
Trumpet and French horn. You got Alan Ferber on trombone, Nicole McCabe on alto sax, Bob Reynolds on tenor sax, Henry Solomon on baritone sax, Gerald Clayton on piano, and Anna Butters. I was going to say something different, but thank you for helping me out. Mark Ferber on drums, and of course you on guitar. What roles were you casting for musically, and what made each of these players the right voice for this project?
Some of your listeners may be familiar with some of these names. Gerald Clayton is an absolutely astounding pianist, son of the great jazz bass player John Clayton. I've known Gerald as he's been growing up in Los Angeles for many, many years and watched his progress. He's played with Charles Lloyd, Roy Hargrove, John Schofield, really one of the premier pianists. So your listeners might be familiar with Gerald's work. They might be familiar with Anna Butters, who's part of a band called the ETA Quartet, as well as a band called SML. Those are two really beautiful improvised music groups here in Los Angeles that have gotten quite a bit of interest going in the last few years. And Mark Ferber on drums. For me, the heart of the band is the rhythm section.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to have endlessly creative players who could swing and improvise into kind of almost any situation that I put them in. I need fearless people with a wide frame of reference and with openness to the experience. And Mark, Anna, and Gerald epitomize that approach to me. So once I had that in place, I needed to think about, and I've been working with Mark for many, many years. So he's one of the holdovers from my previous Nonet. And so once I had that rhythm section in place, I needed to think about 5 great improvising voices on each of the horns that could blend well together, which is not always the easiest task. You need improvisers, but you need people who can, as a writer, I'm interested in having very, very good ensemble blends, really good intonation, an ability to really think about the fine points about how they might articulate things. And I couldn't think of anybody more suited to that than Mark Ferber's twin brother, Alan Ferber, trombone. We've all been playing together for many years. CJ, who's a member of a chamber music group called Y Music, like the letter Y, which your listeners might be familiar with. Absolutely astounding group of chamber music players, and he's just the center of it, and an incredible jazz player as well. And he plays French horn, which I thought, this texture and some of the arrangements could be beautiful. And he's the perfect sort of section leader, and he was always engaging with the other players in terms of where they would breathe, how they would articulate a section, just all those little fine points. So he turned out to be a great hinge there in terms of the players. And then 3 absolutely powerful saxophone soloists: Henry Solomon on baritone, Bob Reynolds, who's in the band Snarky Puppy that your listeners may know, and Nicole McCabe. Literally, their voices are just unstoppable. They're such exciting soloists to listen to. Anytime they put their horn in their mouth, they're playing something compelling and interesting.
Right.
So simply my favorite musicians to be around. They express joy and openness in everything they do, and that's what I'm looking for in this band.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, speaking of outstanding, let's hear another track from the new album and talk about it on the other side. This is Triple Chase, and you're listening to Backstage Bay Area. That's Triple Chase by guitarist Anthony Wilson. I'm speaking with him today about his new album, House of the Singing Blossoms. Anthony, Triple Chase opens the new album, and it's by your father, Gerald Wilson. What made this the right doorway into this record?
You know, it's a song by my father. If your listeners aren't familiar with him, Gerald Wilson was a great, great, great trumpet player, composer, arranger. He had a big band over about 5-6 decade period. Lived in Los Angeles, worked with Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Sarah Vaughan, Jimmy Lunsford, Ella Fitzgerald, many, many people. This little modal tune of his, Triple Chase, which is a vehicle for 3 saxophones to get involved in a kind of an old school, blowing session. I always loved. It's up tempo, it's fiery, and it's hot, and it's really a vehicle for just stretching out and soloing. And composers these days for large ensembles, the kind of albums that you hear a lot of times, the first foot that many composers will put forward is to kind of demonstrate the depth of their composing chops, and what I loved about this was out of the gate, it shows that what this band is about, above all else, is a commitment, even though it's about writing and arranging, is a commitment to serious improvising and serious playing. And there's something about a chart like that that just allows the players to start going right from the jump. That sets a beautiful tone. It's a nod to the fact that my father really valued that, and it's something that I feel that I inherited from him as well. And I mean, it starts out, there's a count off, and Gerald Clayton comes out of the gate with a solo. That's just fantastic. And then the saxophones follow suit. So it felt fitting to do it. It was actually the producer Dave Robert's idea to sequence that first. He said, not everybody starts their albums in this way, and it just sets a great tone. So I'm really glad he came up
All
with that.
right. Yeah. Let's close out the music section of today's show with Border Town, another track off of the new album. And we'll talk more about it on the other side. This is Anthony Wilson on Backstage Bay Area. This is Backstage Bay Area. I'm Steve Roby with guitarist Anthony Wilson, walking you through a first listen of a bunch of tracks from his upcoming album, House of the Singing Blossoms. And we just heard Border Town. Border Town carries this swampy saloon door sway, but blooms into a larger ensemble sound. Anthony, what grabbed you about that tune, and how did you reimagine it for Nonet?
Benny Wallace, great tenor saxophonist from Chattanooga, Tennessee. So he's got that Southern strain of beauty and Americana in what he does. He's always been one of my favorite players since I was in my late teens. He did a couple of albums for Blue Note that are very special. One was called Twilight Time, and the other was called Border Town. Mm-hmm. They were both produced by Dr. John, by the way. I just love this kind of feeling of as you said, swampy. You know, something that just gets into your bones. And it has a kind of a cinematic feel. It moves through a kind of a minor theme with a saxophone feature, and then it's almost as though you're in some kind of Western, and you go through the swinging doors of the saloon, and you end up in some new space. Man, I just love that kind of that feel and that beautiful evocative melody. So just a piece from one of my favorite composers, and as one of the things that I wrote two very extended pieces for this album, and then I wanted to give tribute to composers that I really love. So Benny being one of them. We also recorded a couple of songs by Joe Zawinul of Weather Report, and we recorded some pieces by Keith Jarrett as well. It felt fitting to kind of find my way into adapting those very strong composers' voices into this band.
Right. You said your recent writing leans towards song shapes, even inside larger forms. Where do you hear that on Border Town or elsewhere on the album?
Oh man, I mean, on Border Town, for instance, is a song. It's got this almost a kind of a tango, kind of a Southern tango, and you could almost hear lyrics to that song. I like the sense that you're telling a story with what you do in music. To me, it helps give shape and a kind of an architecture to the music that sometimes just the idea that we're composing larger structures and sometimes that tends to kind of confuse me, and the sense of songs being at the heart of things. Joe Zawinul, wrote this song called Walk Tall that Cannonball Adderley played, and he was also the composer of things like Birdland and Mercy, Mercy, Mercy. He always had a songful quality to what he did. One of the Keith Jarrett pieces that we recorded on the album is an actual Native American folk song. And so I just love the way melodies of songs can carry forth a feeling. And since it's what I'm looking for most of all is to impart a feeling, I like to never keep that too far away from my awareness. I just feel like it helps inform what I'm doing. So even my tunes on this album, the Blues for Wandering Angels is one of the titles, and then the title track, House of the Singing Blossoms, I tried to give them a sense of a songful melody that you can kind of latch onto and hold on to.
The great thing about it is you're bringing this music to SFJAZZ's Joe Henderson Lab for 4 shows, September 4th and 5th, 2 shows each night. What version of the ensemble are you bringing, and how does that intimate room change the way you pace a Nonet set?
We're going to have kind of a hybrid of the album group and some other folks that I know, because as I said early on, availabilities of large groups of musicians can be tough, but Mark Ferber will be on drums. Nicole McCabe and Bob Reynolds will be with us. Great pianist named Josh Nelson. I actually have been also teaching at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music for the last 4 years. And so two recent graduates are joining us on this. I'm very
Nice.
excited.
Yeah.
I have Nate Gilbreth on trombone and Alan Jones on bass. They're both outstanding musicians who have, in the 4 years that I've known both of them, really transformed into, top flight players.
Yep.
And also a young baritone player who's studying here in LA at USC named Daniel Wijadasa. So kind of a young bucks and seasoned veterans, and I'm really excited about that. I love, both Sam First and the Joe Henderson Lab are intimate rooms. You're close to the audience. Every time I've played at Joe Henderson Lab, I always just love the energy that comes off, that comes from the audience.
Yeah.
And you're sitting, you're surrounded by windows and the street there, and just the sense of the cityscape, I think, will invigorate the players and the audience. And it's my first time bringing my own band to SFJAZZ. The beginning of their season. It's one of the opening shows of their season. So I'm absolutely honored and completely excited that I'm getting to do this. So I know that my excitement levels will be off the charts, and I'll bring that to leading the band for sure.
Yeah, that room, almost the music sometimes when I was sitting there the other night, the music almost becomes a soundtrack to the world outside. You got busy Franklin Street with the cars going up and down, people peering their heads into the windows, and it's getting all humid inside, and it's just it's quite an experience.
It really is an amazing space.
Are you planning any surprises, arrangements, or workshopping anything specifically for this show?
I've got some things new going on. We'll just see if I can get them into shape by the time we play. And I have some old things. I mean, having had this 9-piece band over about a 20-year period, I've got a large book that I can draw from, and so it might be fun to. I had a student today. I was giving a lesson, and he referenced one of the songs from my very first album, and I thought, wow, well, I was doing some interesting things even back then, and it might be fun to just, revisit some of those charts with a new approach. So we'll see.
All right. And let me remind our listeners, Anthony Wilson's new album is House of the Singing Blossoms, and it's out August 29th. You can catch him at SFJAZZ's Joe Henderson Lab on September 4th and 5th with 2 shows nightly. If you need tickets, go to sfjazz.org. And for more info on the album, stop by anthonywilsonmusic.com. Anthony, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much, Steve. And folks, come on out. We'll be so happy to play for you.
Absolutely. I'm Steve Roby, and this is Backstage Bay Area. Stay with us. More music ahead.
Hey, musicians. Would you like to be a guest on Backstage Bay Area? Just email the host and let him know when you'll be playing in the Bay Area. The address is backstage.sfbay@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the show. Thank you for tuning into the Backstage Bay Area podcast. Don't forget to visit us online at backstagebayarea.com for more insights and stories. Be sure to join us next time for more engaging conversations with local talent and touring musicians. Until then, keep the music alive, and we'll see you backstage.